The Yankees lose. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest. Welcome back to another episode of OC and TJ, aka the Collin Callahan Show, aka Dialed In, because you know me, when it comes to the NFL, I'm always dialed in. We're going to get into our Week 6 picks. We had so many upsets taking place the week prior, and we're going to get into all of that in just a few seconds. But I think we just start with the Thursday night preview and, jump right into the predictions episode. So let us just get it. Let us have fun. Let us have a ball. I'm going to stop stalling and just share the screen. Here we go. All right, so tonight's matchup is going to be between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Giants. This is the fifth division rivalry matchup in the last 6 Thursday night games, and all of them have come down to the wire. So my hope is that we're going to get a similar script, and I think we will because both teams are coming off pretty horrific losses. Well, I wouldn't say horrific, but pretty gut-wrenching defeats. Let's start with the Philadelphia Eagles, who held a 17-3 lead to the Denver Broncos at home, nonetheless, and surrendered 18 unanswered points to lose the game by 4. The biggest reason why, you guessed it, their offense. Wasn't anything that they couldn't do, when it came to the passing game. And it's not even just that. Guess how many carries Saquon Barkley got the entire game? 6. How many did he get in the second half? 1. He had that 47-yard receiving touchdown, a few plays into the second half. He beat Alex Singleton on a double move. That was a pass-catching touchdown, so I'll give him that. But Kevin Patullo, the offensive coordinator, what the hell is his vision? What the hell is his scheme? Because he doesn't utilize his best players. They don't pass the ball a lot. They don't get the yardage that they need to go down the field and score. They don't put themselves in the best situations possible. They're relying on their defense to bail them out most of the time. Their offensive line has, suffered a couple steps back. They just lost Landon Dickerson for a couple weeks. What is the scheme? What is their direction? What is their vision? And against a team like the Denver Broncos, they simply just exploited every single little flaw that they had. Jalen Hurts got sacked 6 times. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, to their credit, got targeted more, but A.J. Brown only had 1 catch in the second half. And Devontae Smith, even though he finished with 100 yards, after that opening drive of the second half, they couldn't do much of anything. And the defense was just so undisciplined. They're giving up 3rd and long plays. There was that helmet-to-helmet penalty on Zach Bond that allowed Denver to kick a late field goal with, little time on the clock. The pass rush didn't show up. They didn't force a single takeaway. And give Bo Nix credit. He definitely did what he needed to do in that fourth quarter to win. I think he went, 13 of 16 for 100-plus yards with, a touchdown pass to Evan Ingram. So he did more than enough to win the game, and he really showed up in the clutch. But, yeah, this said more about Philadelphia's flaws and vulnerabilities than anything else. So the New York Giants, they were up 14-3 as well against the New Orleans Saints on the road. But what killed them was not their offense running into a brick wall or the defense falling apart, was turnovers. They turned the ball over 5 freaking times. 3 of them on 3 straight drives. Cam Scatterboot coughed it up. That led to a scoop and score by Jordan Howden. Darius Slayton was responsible for the first one that gave the Saints the spark they needed to take a lead at halftime. Jackson Dart dropped the football when he was trying to take off for a scramble. And then Jackson Dart threw 2 interceptions to Kool-Aid McKinstry that just all but sealed the deal. And it wasn't like the Saints offense was playing spectacular. They had a big play to Rashid Shaheed, but they weren't outstanding or absolutely dynamic. They got into scoring range where they needed to, but for the most part, they were just selling for field goals. And in the second half, they only got 3 points, and, they couldn't really do much of anything. If the offense just held on to the football, the Giants would have won the game. And now they're heading back home on Thursday Night Football to play on the trash turf field that is at MetLife Stadium, and they got to welcome back Saquon Barkley. Philadelphia, you better win this game. I mean, obviously, they're playing each other twice in the next 3 weeks, so there's a very good chance that the Giants could split it. And to be quite honest, I don't really see this as a cakewalk, to be quite honest with you. If the Giants could just stay out of their way and hold on to the football, I think they could really take the Eagles to task. But Philadelphia, they just have a more talented offense. I know that, Saquon Barkley will be more than extra motivated, but this comes down to coaching. You got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, one of the best offensive lines in the league, the best running back in football, yet you can't even play a full 60 minutes. Like, you got to figure this out. Otherwise, Kevin Patullo, he might not even last near the halfway point of the season. And if you're the Giants, you got to hope to God that you play perfect on all three faces, or else, one little slip up could swing the whole momentum around the other way. So I'm going to pick the Eagles to win in a pretty close game, 20-13. Now to begin Sunday morning, we revisit the beautiful comforts of London, England, as the Denver Broncos are playing the New York Jets. Yeah, this is going to be a blowout. I don't even know if I even want to watch this because it's so predictable. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope, listen, the last two international matches, they were a little closer than we could have anticipated. I mean, the Steelers, they were up 24-6 against the Vikings in Ireland, but they only won by 3. And a week later, Minnesota against Cleveland held on by 4. So, I mean, I'm hoping that we don't get a blowout, but the Jets are just... I have a friend that works for the New York Jets. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I could already tell he's absolutely disgusted, and he should be, because the defense is horrible. They don't have a single takeaway through 5 games. They give up the second most points in the National Football League. The offense is literally run the football and throw it to Garrett Wilson. Their ceiling is so incredibly low that the fact that they were even competitive in 2 of their games, well, 3 if you want to count the Miami one, is flat out astonishing. And now they're going up against the second best scoring defense and a front four that's leading the league in sacks. So, yeah. I mean, I pretty much talked about what I needed to when it came to the Denver Broncos. Their defense, they held its own, especially in the second half. They did give up a few early plays, early on, especially to start the third quarter. But, thanks to Philadelphia's incompetence, Denver took advantage, and their offense capitalized on the opportunities that they were given. J.K. Dobbins had a pretty good game. Courtland Sutton, made some big-time plays along with Evan Ingram. Bo Nix in the fourth quarter was sensational. So you got to give them credit. I mean, I definitely don't want to shortchange anybody after, a comeback or, a blown double-digit lead. But, yeah, I already said what I needed to say. The Jets, so much for me thinking that they could beat the Dallas Cowboys. I thought, if Russell Wilson could have a huge game against this trash defense, I don't understand how Justin Fields can't. And they didn't score a single touchdown until garbage time. They coughed it up a couple times. They couldn't convert on 4th down. They were pitiful on 3rd down. The penalties were still absurd. I think they committed, 10 more for 90-something yards? Let me look at my notes here because 10 flags for 61 yards. Okay, sue me. I was off with the yardage, but it's just predictable with how bad they've been on both sides of the ball. And there are rumblings that Aaron Glenn might not even last, another year with this football team. And I'm not going to be one of those guys because, listen, I don't want to compare it to Dan Campbell, but his first year in Detroit was bad. They only won 3 games. Obviously, you can respect the fight and, the type of passion that they played, but they only went 3-14-1. They clinched a second overall pick. And then afterwards, they've had, the best success they've had as a franchise. So I'm not guaranteeing that's going to be the same thing for the Jets, but things have to go extremely wrong over the next month or so for, Woody Johnson to pull the trigger. And honestly, it wouldn't be surprising if he did because he's one of the worst owners in the National Football League. So to make a long story short, Denver Broncos win 30-13. They're just a way better football team, to be quite honest with you. And honestly, one more point, the fact that Steve Wilkes is still a defensive coordinator honestly surprises me because I'm like, what the heck has this guy actually done in the last 7 years? I mean, I get it. He didn't do a bad job as the interim guy in Carolina. He took over for the 49ers the year after. They went to the Super Bowl. But outside of that, as a coordinator, it's been average at best. And I just don't understand it. I really don't. And Tanner Angstrom, the offensive coordinator, he's really starting to struggle. And I'm not calling for his job, but he's starting to realize that being a passing game coordinator is not the same thing as being the main OC. So, okay. Now we move on to an AFC versus NFC game. We got the Indianapolis Colts versus the Arizona Cardinals. Indianapolis, they absolutely beat the living snot out of the Las Vegas Raiders. 40-6. They scored a touchdown on almost every single drive except the opening possession where they went 3 and out for the first time all season at home. Well, at home at least. And the defense picked off Geno Smith twice. He now leads the league in interceptions with 9, but I'll get into more of that in just a few minutes. Jonathan Taylor was spectacular. Daniel Jones was efficient. Tyler Warren was more of a focal point. And to be quite honest, if the Colts had a kicker, they would have probably scored 50. That's how bad it was. But Spencer Schrader, unfortunately and devastatingly, suffered a season-ending injury to his knee. It was on a roughing the kicker penalty, and that's why Indianapolis promoted the money badger, Michael Badgley, to the active roster for this performance against Arizona. But Indianapolis is playing with house money right now. They have been, the biggest surprise story, or one of the biggest surprise stories in the league. Daniel Jones is playing the best ball of his career. He's top 3 in passing yards. He's only turned the ball over twice. He's only been sacked 4 times. And, he's putting his teammates in the best situation, in the best positions to be successful, which is honestly something I was expecting more out of Kyler Murray this year. But as you saw last week against the Titans, they absolutely choked. A 21-3 lead to the Tennessee Titans. They didn't score at all in the second half. They turned it over 3 times, and in the fourth quarter, they just absolutely fell apart. Let's count the ways, shall we? Early in the second quarter, the Cardinals are driving into field goal range. The 3 points is going to put them up 24-3. And instead, Kyler Murray botched the snap. He didn't even try to go for the football, and the Titans fell on it. First takeaway of the game. I don't even care that the offense went 3 and out because those were 3 points that Arizona left off the board. The second one, oh my gosh. The second one, Amari DiMercato shoots up the middle for what would have been the dagger touchdown. They were going to go up 28-6. 22 points. It was going to be game over. And just like A.D. Mitchell did last week against the Rams, he coughed up the ball before crossing the goal line. It goes out of bounds. It's a touchback. And the Titans go off from there. That fumble right there was the one that really was really the one that cost Arizona the game. Probably more than this next turnover, which was just flat out bonkers. Midway through the fourth quarter, or late in the fourth quarter, Cam Ward threw an interception to Taylor Demerson. That's how his last name is spelled, Taylor Demerson. He loses control of the ball as he is falling to the ground. There's a scrum for it. It bounces all the way into the end zone, and Tyler Lockett falls on it for the touchdown. And Tennessee's only down by 2. They're only down 2 points. I'm like, what are you doing? And Arizona's offense, on a drive where they needed to pick up a couple first downs to run out the clock, they went 3 and out, and when Cam Ward got the ball back, he showed everybody why he was picked number 1 overall. Because right after the 2-minute warning, he hit Calvin Ridley on a deep 38-yard shot down the sideline to get well into field goal range, and Joey Sly put on the finishing touches with a 29-yard walk-off. Yeah, we're picking the Colts to win this game. Kyler Murray he didn't practice the last 2 days because of a foot injury. So Jacoby Brissett is going to get the start against, his former team, the Indianapolis Colts. Played for them in 2017, started for them in 2019, the year that Andrew Luck surprisingly retired. But I've lost all faith in Arizona whatsoever. I mean, the fact that they scapegoated the head coach for chewing out DiMercato, rightfully so, because he literally cost his team the game by getting overconfident and arrogant before even crossing the goal line. The fact that they fined him $100,000, yet Amari DiMercato gets to walk away scot-free. I mean, that just shows how bad and dire straits that the Cardinals are in right now. I mean, they started the season 2-0, but those were games that they were desperately begging the Saints and Panthers to win. And this time against the Titans, they got what they wanted. Blown 21-3 lead. You lose by 1. No one has any sympathy for you. Colts win 27-17. Good grief. All right, I'm going to calm down here because now we've got one of the more competitive AFC rivalry matchups we got this week. The Miami Dolphins welcoming the Los Angeles Chargers. Another season, another debate about whether Tua Tagovailoa is better than Justin Herbert. And to be quite honest, at this point of the season, who even cares anymore? Because the Dolphins are 1-4. They also blew a huge lead of their own, a 17-0 lead against the Carolina Panthers, only to lose by 3 points. And the Chargers, after going up 10-0 in the first quarter, surrendered 27 unanswered to the Washington Commanders. Where do I even start with? Honestly, let's just start with the Dolphins because they're in a more pathetic situation. They got up to as great of a start as you could ask for. You know, they forced 2 early turnovers for Bryce Young. I mean, Bradley Chubb got a huge strip sack, and then on the next drive, Minka Fitzpatrick came up with an interception. And Miami's offense, they capitalized on them. They scored 17 points. They were up 17-0. I'm thinking, okay, this is probably going to be a blowout. But to Bryce Young's credit, he recomposed himself, got his focus back. His confidence never wavered. And for the rest of the game, he played really well. But at the same time, I don't think that he would have had as, an improved performance if it weren't for Rico Dowdle. They didn't have Chuba Hubbard because he was out with an injury, but Dowdle made his first start of the season and ran for over 200 yards. 200 against a Carolina offensive line that lost a few of its starters. I know that Miami's defense has several holes, but how in God's name do you let that happen? And worst of all, the offense didn't do anything after they took that 17-0 lead. I mean, they had that late desperation touchdown to Jalen Waddle that actually gave Miami the lead. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is the time for them to wake up. But when Carolina went up 27-24, the offense went 3 and out. They punted the football back, which honestly, I didn't have too much of a problem with. You're pinned deep in your own territory. You don't really want to give them extra points. And they did set the Carolina Panthers back at their own 23-yard line. And then right on cue, 3rd and 5, Jack Jones, flagged for pass interference, puts the game away. Panthers win 27-24. But, yeah, the biggest reason why I think the Miami offense, couldn't do anything after that, they couldn't run the football. Achane only touched the ball 10 times and picked up only 16 yards. How in the world are you supposed to win with that? It's no wonder why, without Tyreek Hill, too, as your number one option. So if you can't run the ball and you don't have your best receiver, all you got to really do is just double Jalen Waddle and get enough hands on Darren Waller and make sure that Tua's holding onto the football long enough so that you can generate enough pressure. And that's the way to beat Miami. And if you're the Chargers, you're kind of in a similar predicament because they started the season 3-0. They beat the Chiefs in their version of the Super Bowl. They beat the Raiders on Monday Night Football. And then the following week, they beat Denver. 3 divisional opponents. But then they scored 18 on the road against the Giants with Jackson Dart making his first start. And then after going up 10-0 against Washington, 1 lost fumble from Quentin Johnston completely shut down the offense and gave Jaden Daniels the spark that Washington needed to just go on a tear the rest of the way. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was sensational in his breakout game. He had 14 carries for 113 yards with a couple of wide open touchdowns. And the Chargers offense, Amarian Hampton got hurt. He's on IR with an ankle injury. And, they're down. They don't have their 2 starting tackles. Like, this offense is falling off a cliff. And going up against the Miami Dolphins, I can't even guarantee that they're going to win this game. I'm gonna give them one last chance for respectability. But listen, Tua is 2-1 against Justin Herbert, and this is only going to be the second time that these two guys are going to meet each other in Hard Rock Stadium. The last time they did that was in 2020, and Tua ended up winning that game by 8 points, if I'm not mistaken, mainly because of Jason Sanders. So I think both quarterbacks are going to play extremely well. You know that the offenses are going to keep each other on its heels, but to me, it just comes down to defenses, and I just trust the Chargers to, make some incredible plays down the stretch and just to ensure that, they don't teeter at 3-3. So For my final score, I'm going to pick the Chargers to win 27-21. Boop. Okie dokie. Patriots versus Saints. Patriots. Oh, yeah. We're back. We are so back because not only did they beat Buffalo at Buffalo, but Stephon Diggs was sensational in his return to Highmark Stadium. Had 10 catches for 142 yards. Ramondre Stevenson, after fumbling the ball again in the middle of the first quarter, scored the only 2 touchdowns of the day for New England. And the better part is Drake May outplayed Josh Allen from start to finish. Drake May in the second half only threw 1 incompletion. Listen, I get the Bills' defense is injured. I mean, they just lost Matt Milano again. Ed Oliver's been dealing with injuries. Their secondary hasn't been great. The run defense, they were the second worst in the league entering this game. So I get it. Buffalo's defense wasn't exactly a full strength, but to do what he did on the road against an undefeated team that's supposed to be the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs and that is supposed to, be one of the favorites to win the AFC in general, that just lets you know that that's the team that's the type of game that they need to win to get their respect back and to kind of assert themselves in the playoff picture. And now that they're going on the road to play the New Orleans Saints, they should have a lot of optimism, entering Sunday afternoon. But the Saints are entering their first win of the season as well, or they're coming off their first win of the season as well. They were down 14-3 against the Giants. The offense had a few big plays here and there, but the defense, they flipped the momentum by forcing an early turnover and then 4 more since then to, win the game by double digits. So this is going to be a pretty extra competitive game. In the last 2 meetings between these two teams at Gillette Stadium, the Saints absolutely humiliated the New England Patriots. So I am not going to say that this is going to be a cakewalk by any means necessary. And especially if Christian Gonzalez is not going to play on Sunday, because just a half an hour ago, he injured his hamstring again. So my best corner and my best defensive player is probably going to be a game-time decision entering Sunday. And I'm hoping that this was just precautionary. I'm hoping that he didn't re-aggravate it. But hamstrings are just so finicky. You never really know how healed they actually are. So I think for the Patriots, you just got to make sure that, you pick up where you left off last week. You don't get in your own way. I mean, they were up by 10 in the fourth quarter. They forced 3 turnovers and 11 penalties for the Bills, but afterwards they kind of started to lose their composure before they, did enough to win the game by 3. So I'm going to pick the Patriots to win. I just think they're better coached. They got a better quarterback, but I think this will be a pretty feisty grudge matchup until the final minutes of the fourth quarter. So my final score, I think the Patriots will win 26-17. Now we have the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Cleveland Browns. Pittsburgh is coming off a bye week, so there's not really too much to discuss there. The Cleveland Browns, on the other hand, lost 21-17 to the Minnesota Vikings in London. And it was a game that they definitely had a lot of chances of win. Had plenty of chances to win. I mean, they forced 2 fumbles from Jordan Mason and Xavier Scott. Will Reichard, he missed a 51-yard field goal. Carson Wentz, he was under duress for most of the game. He even got injured late in the second quarter and didn't even take a snap on the final drive of the half. And, unfortunately, Cleveland, they just could not capitalize on their chances to put the game away. They started off decent in the first half. Like, after the fumble from Jordan Mason, the offense goes right down the field. They score a touchdown. They take an early 7-0 lead. On their 2-minute drive of the half, they go down the field to kick a field goal. They're up by 3 points, and I'm thinking, okay, Cleveland actually has a chance to do this. But to start the second half, Minnesota, they went right down the field. They got into the end zone to retake the lead. And then Cleveland, they do the same thing. They took a 3-point lead, and I'm thinking, okay, Cleveland can force, a takeaway or a big stop. All they got to get is, maybe a couple more. All they really need to do is have a couple more scoring drives to just, kind of establish your lead and to keep your momentum on your side. But after that opening drive of the third quarter, they only had 73 more yards of offense. I think they only had 1 first down in the 4 drives since then. So, I mean, it was just, it was a car crash that we saw coming from a mile away, unfortunately. And, Yeah, Cleveland just, like I said, they just couldn't capitalize on their chances. And Minnesota, when they finally got a chance to, not humiliate themselves, they did so. And, thanks to Carson Wentz, they, go right down the field. Jordan Addison, after not even playing in the first quarter, not even getting targeted in the second because he missed a walkthrough in practice, he was the one that scored the game-winning touchdown. And, he redeemed himself. And it's a pretty sweet story to hear, putting yourself in a bad situation only for you to turn it around and, help your team win the game. That's just, it's absolutely remarkable. And the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because Minnesota's on a bye week. So I'm going to pick the Steelers to win this game, though, but I do not think that this is going to be a blowout because, listen, Dylan Gabriel, he looked decent in his first start. And going up against a Steelers defense that hasn't really been immaculate through the first 4 games of the season, or through their first 4 games of the season, I should say. I think that as long as Dylan Gabriel can withstand the pressure that he is about to face from the likes of TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and Derek Carmen or Alex Highsmith, if he can withstand the pass rush and not turn the ball over, then Cleveland has a really good chance of making this close. And because, listen, Cleveland's defense, they're not exactly great. They're bottom of the pack in scoring, but a lot of that was because, the offense turned the ball over a lot and they were put in bad field position. But they're still one of the best yardage defenses in the National Football League. Cleveland is. So, but the reason why I say the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win is because they have not lost a regular season game at home to the Cleveland Browns since 2003. So I think that because of that historical factor that they already have an early advantage. You still have Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf. You're hoping to get Jalen Warren back from injury. And listen, Cleveland's O-line is going to struggle because you're going up against one of the best pass rushers in the game and a Steelers front four that can still wreak havoc. And especially when you have a good name brand secondary with Jalen Ramsey and Joey Porter and Darius Slay and Deshaun Elliott and those guys. So I think it could be pretty feisty. I think it'll be pretty close, but I just like Aaron Rodgers over Dylan Gabriel in this one. So I'm going to pick Pittsburgh 24-10. Now we get to the Cowboys versus the Panthers. So the last 2 times that, Bryce Young got to play the Cowboys at home, he got absolutely slaughtered in both matchups. The first was to Dak Prescott, in which the Panthers lost 33-10. The second was to Cooper Rush, in which Dallas won 30-14. So while I do think that both offenses are going to play extremely well because both defenses are just not good at all whatsoever. Listen, Dallas did great last week, but you played the Jets. Congratulations. You didn't make it close like the Steelers or the Buccaneers or even the Dolphins did. So bravo. You showed that you were at least a pretty good football team. But I think when it comes down to it, it's going to come down to the bigger moments in the final minutes. And I just trust Dak Prescott to do that more than I really can with Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young is capable of pulling it off, but I just need to see it before I can believe it. Yeah, I think that's the right way to say it. But nonetheless, I think the Cowboys win this game 37-34. Now we have the Rams and the Ravens. Oh boy. I don't really know which one is more humiliating. The fact that, the Ravens got absolutely obliterated by the Houston Texans on their home field, or that the Rams lost to a hobbled 49ers team at home in overtime on a primetime stage. Rams could have won this game. Really, they should have won this game. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the 49ers. Mac Jones was phenomenal. Kendrick Bourne was great. It's making me a salty Patriots fan because they're finally on a real team with, great coaching and serviceable pieces around them. And the defense made enough plays. I don't want to take anything away from the 49ers, but the Rams were down 20-7 at one point. They fumbled the ball twice from Blake Corum and Kyron Williams. An extra point got blocked that could have given the Rams the lead in the fourth quarter. And in overtime, they go for it on 4th and goal, and they run it up the gut to Kyron Williams, and it went nowhere. Nowhere. And the 49ers, they didn't really do too much in the second half. They had a couple of outstanding drives to start the game. They had a 7-play drive on their first possession. They had a 14-play one the next. and they took an early 14-0 lead. But after that, it was just a field goal fest. And the Rams were just, the Rams defense tried to give their offense as much breathing room as possible, but they just got in their own way. And for the Baltimore Ravens, saying that the same thing happened to them would just be an absolute understatement. I'm not too surprised that the Houston Texans won this game. I picked them to win because no Lamar Jackson, no Roquan Smith, no Ronnie Stanley, no Nami Matabike, no Marlon Humphrey, no Chidobe Awuzie. Kyle Hamilton was limited in practice, but they got absolutely shredded on both sides of the ball. Cooper Rush threw 3 interceptions. C.J. Stroud threw 4 touchdowns. The Texans offense, who have been one of the worst offenses in football, scored 44 points. Derrick Henry went absolutely nowhere. It was already over before halftime. So, Lamar Jackson, he hasn't practiced the last 2 days. He's still dealing with that hamstring injury. I don't think John Harbaugh is going to rush him into this game, especially since they have a bye the next week. So I think that he's going to give Lamar as much time as possible to heal up and to make sure that, he's not putting his season or even worse, his career in jeopardy. But yeah, I got the Rams winning this one. And I don't think it's going to be close by any means necessary. They're stronger on both sides of the football. That's number one. Matthew Stafford is having an incredible season. He's leading the league in passing yards. He's second in touchdown passes. Puka Nacua, he's been the biggest bright spot of it all. He's leading the league in catches and receive. He's on pace to win the Triple Crown this year. Maybe not so much in touchdowns, but at least the catches and yards. That's for damn sure. You've got Devontae Adams as a great compliment. Kyron Williams, when he's not fumbling the football, he's still a serviceable back. And the defense, while it did get its butt handed over to them against the 49ers, they're still a respectable unit, and that's just something that the Ravens aren't right now. They are just falling into a downward spiral right now. And, it's absolutely stunning. It really is. I didn't think they were going to win the Super Bowl anyway, but the fact that they might be 1-5 before their week off, it's just absolutely – it's one of the most disappointing seasons or starts to a season I have ever seen from a team that was supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. So I'm going to pick the Rams to win this one. 37. Actually, no, I got that score wrong. 34-19. Sorry, I didn't get that right. Okay. Next up, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Seattle Seahawks. One's coming off a thrilling win at home. The other is coming off a thrilling defeat. How do you like that? The Seahawks, they lost 38-35 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on a walk-off field goal. And just like many other teams that lost, the biggest reason why was because Seattle made too many mistakes. To start, there was the missed field goal from Jason Myers that, allowed Tampa to take an early 6-0 lead. Then all of a sudden, they decided to try to trick Tampa by having Jalen Milroe take a direct snap and run the option. And the pitch was so bad that it falls behind Kenneth Walker. The Bucs fall on it, and they immediately go right down the field to score a touchdown. And all of a sudden, you're down 13-0. And then, to Sam Darnold's credit, he played absolutely outstanding since then. It was a back-and-forth offensive showcase from start to finish. Sam Darnold was fantastic. Baker Mayfield was more phenomenal. And really, it just came down to whoever got the ball last. And in the final minute, Sam Darnold had a chance to pull off the most vintage performance of his career. But just 2 plays into the final drive, interception, Levante David. And all they really needed were an extra few yards just to get into field goal range. And Chase McLaughlin put on the finishing touches. So that was an absolutely brutal way to lose what was such a winnable game at home. Listen, I'm not going to, let the defense off the hook because they definitely let Tampa Bay, they got absolutely shredded by a Bucs offense that didn't have Bucky Irving, that didn't have Mike Evans, that didn't have a good chunk of its offensive linemen. And, I can't help but praise Baker Mayfield. To me, I think he just searched himself to the top of the MVP board, but I'll get into that in just a few seconds. The Jaguars, they beat Kansas City at home on Monday Night Football. And this is honestly a game where I was thinking, okay, right on cue, they're down 14-0. They're probably going to get embarrassed. Trevor Lawrence hasn't won a game on Monday Night Football. He against the Chiefs, he looks like a second fiddle. Great way for the Kansas City Chiefs to, get back on to get another winning record. But it wasn't that way because 14-0, the Jaguars, they responded with a pretty successful 2-minute drive that allowed them to, make it a one-score game at the end of the half. The Chiefs, they got the ball to start the third quarter. They go 3-and-out, and the next drive, Jacksonville, they tied the game at 14, and I'm thinking, okay, this is exactly what I wanted to see from them. Maybe this offense can be competitive, and unfortunately, their defense, they were on its heels for the entire game. I mean, obviously, we know that Patrick Mahomes is still one of the best quarterbacks in football. He's going to do everything it'll take for his team to win the game. And right on cue, after the Jaguars tied the game, they go right inside the 5-yard line, and I'm thinking, okay, this is probably going to be one of those games where, the Chiefs, they play from ahead from start to finish. They take advantage of the lost fumble at the 1-yard line from Trevor Lawrence earlier in the second quarter. The Jaguars will put up a good fight, but they're just going to come up short in the end. And all of a sudden, Devin Lloyd, who, in my opinion, should be the leading candidate for Defensive Player of the Year, picks off Patrick Mahomes, takes it 99 yards to the house, and Jacksonville's up 21-14 when they were down 14-0 early on. And I'm just leaning back on my couch and I'm thinking, what in the world did I just watch? And everything just went off the rails from there. The Chiefs punted on their next drive, and it wasn't a blowout from that point on because Trevor Lawrence threw an interception to Trent McDuffie that really should have been called for pass interference. But the defense, they still give up a touchdown. They let the Chiefs tie the game. And really, just like the Seattle game, it was just about, who got the ball last. And I got to give Trevor Lawrence so much credit for how he played. They kicked a field goal after, the interception. Then the Chiefs scored a touchdown. But on their final drive, he threw a huge pass to Brian Thomas Jr. down the sideline that got them in a field goal range. He made incredible plays with his legs, including the go-ahead touchdown in which he slipped, fell to the ground, got back up, dodged two linebackers, and had a wide-open lane to the end zone. And he just, anytime that, his back was against the wall or anytime that he made a mistake, his confidence never wavered. The team never gave up on him. Liam Cohen was certainly not going to give up on him. And it was by far the best win he's had in his career, just given the circumstances. I know that comeback in the playoffs against the Chargers will always be like, an unforgettable and unremovable memory. But the fact that he outplayed Patrick Mahomes at home on a primetime stage to send them to 2-3 and to give Jacksonville, the tie for the division lead, it's just absolutely remarkable. And honestly, I think they're going to do the exact same thing against Seattle. They're at home. They have a defense that has not only exceeded expectations, but is leading the league in takeaways. Their offense can really run the ball effectively. And when Trevor Lawrence isn't messing up, he's putting his players in the best position to be successful. And when you look at Sam Darnold's track record against the Jaguars, it's not looking good. He's played them 3 times and has thrown 3 touchdown passes to 6 interceptions. 6. So I think that, I think Sam Darnold can keep this close. I hope that he, has an outstanding game against this Jacksonville defense. But I think because Trevor Lawrence has the home field advantage and that they're in the comforts of, their passionate fan base and, they got the crowd on their side. The defense is playing at an all-time high. The offense is not sending the team back. I just think the Jaguars are going to make enough plays down the stretch to make sure that they take it home. So I'll say they win this one 31-28. Okie dokie. Now we get to the Titans versus the Raiders. I can't even guarantee that the Raiders are going to win this week because Geno Smith has just been absolutely awful. I mean, I get that he didn't have Brock Bowers. That's fine. But what the heck does that have to do with the decision-making? He threw 2 interceptions, 2 more interceptions, I should say. He's leading the league in that category with 9. The next closest is Jake Browning with 8, and he's only played in 4 games. So Geno Smith has been the biggest reason why the Raiders are in this mess. The defense can only do so much. Ashton Janey, he's been a huge bright spot, but again, he's another player that can only do so much. The wide receiving room hasn't really been involved over the last few weeks. They really haven't had a big game with the exception of Trey Tucker against the Commanders in garbage time. And now you're going up against the Titans team that just overcame a 21-3 deficit against Arizona, and Cam Ward is coming off a phenomenal fourth quarter. So I'm going to be quite frank here. It can really go either way, but I like the Titans in this one. I think both teams have disruptors on their defensive line. You know, Max Crosby for the Raiders and Jeffrey Simmons with the Titans. Honestly, it comes down to, ball security, and it comes to, the turnover margin. And I think the Titans, if they can force a mistake or two, they can, their offense can definitely feed off of that energy. And I think that they can, steal enough momentum as the game wears on to, hang on by at least 5 points. So I'm going to say that the Titans win this game 24-19. But the only way that the Raiders can reverse that outcome, hold on to the football. Simple. All right, now we get to the Packers and the Bengals. Jake Browning, benched. He's been absolutely horrible. I already said it. 8 picks in 4 games. He threw 3 last week against the Detroit Lions. When Jamar Chase is the leading tackler on your team, it's atrocious. Things are falling off a downward spiral because these last few weeks have been outright pitiful. They got demolished 48-10 to Minnesota, 28-3 to Denver, and now 37-24 to the Lions. That honestly should have been a lot worse, but in the fourth quarter, the Bengals, they padded their stats. They were playing against a pretty bad defense, and they scored 3 touchdowns in literal garbage time. So I don't even care about the fact that Jake Browning had 3 touchdowns and that Jamar Chase had over 110 yards. And what do? They don't try to trade for Kirk Cousins, or they don't, try to go for someone else on the market. They traded for Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco. He beat the Packers in week 3. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to take that away from him. But there's a reason why Cleveland decided to bench him for Dylan Gabriel, because he was just as much of a turnover magnet as Jake Browning has been. Joe Flacco has only thrown 2 touchdown passes and 6 interceptions. And this is just a desperation move to me, because Zach Taylor is just, it's such an abject mess right now, along with this football team, that he's just hanging on to his job. And he's trying to, cling on to it for as long as possible. So, and now they're going up against the Packers team in Lambeau Field that is coming off of a bye week and had 2 weeks to, kind of regather themselves and try to figure out what their identity is going to be. Week 3 against the Browns, their offense couldn't do anything in the fourth quarter, and they let them down. Against the Cowboys, they tied because the defense was on its heels, and they were absolutely visionless pretty much the entire game. So, listen, I think the Cincinnati Bengals are hoping that he could channel the energy that he had in 2023, where he miraculously took the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs. And when you look at the personnel around Joe Flacco, who knows? Maybe you don't want to lose all hope in him just yet, because you still have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Yoshi Voss and Gesicki, but O-line is still terrible. The defense is way worse than the one the Cleveland Browns have right now. And listen, if they score 13 points again, I can guarantee you the Packers are not going to, only get 10 this time around. I think they're going to learn their lesson, especially over these last few days. So better yet, the last 2 weeks, honestly. So I'm going to pick the Packers to win in a game that is not going to be close, 34-20. And now we get to the last Sunday afternoon game. We got the 49ers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Nick Bosa is not going to play. Obviously, I think it's probably one of the only guys that truly resents Baker Mayfield when you look at the history between these two guys. This started back in college when Oklahoma beat Ohio State at Ohio State, and Mayfield planted the flag on the Ohio State logo after the game ended. It carried over into the NFL, where in their first meeting in 2019, Baker got absolutely demolished, 31-3, and you know Bosa decided to do the flag plant right next to him. And then just last year, the 49ers, they won that game 20-17. Took, I mean, the Bucs had so many chances to win because Jake Moody missed 3 field goals, but the offense didn't wake up until it was too late. And the 49ers, they showed up in the clutch. Nick Bosa got a late sack. He was the victim of the stiff arm throw in which Baker Mayfield, found Rachaad White down the field on a huge 4th down conversion, but it wasn't enough. And, now that Bosa's not on the other side, I think that Baker Mayfield is going to get his first win against the 49ers. Brock Purdy is going to be out once again, so Mac Jones will make his 4th start of the season, if I'm not mistaken. And he's been great in backup duty. And honestly, if the 49ers win again, I think that a quarterback controversy might, arise and, cause a lot of discussion. But I think, listen, the 49ers, they're still dealing with injuries. I think the offense can still play really competitive. And because we saw them literally do the same thing against the Rams at the Rams. They forced a couple takeaways. They blocked an extra point. They got the 4th down stop that won them the game. The offense was dynamic with Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne as the main focal points. But I think, listen, both offenses are going to play extremely well. I think it's going to come down to the defenses and who's going to take advantage. Todd Bowles, we know he's going to do everything it takes to shut down Christian McCaffrey. With Robert Saleh, you know that he's going to throw a couple curveballs at Baker Mayfield, and it's going to work for a big stretch. It's going to come down to which quarterback is going to take advantage of the opportunities down the stretch, and I just have more faith in Baker than I do with Mac Jones right now. I think it'll be really close, but I think Chase McLaughlin, once again, sails out the 5th game-winning drive in 6 weeks to give Tampa Bay the edge 20-17. Now we have Sunday Night Football between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions. It's a rematch of the opening game of the 2023 NFL season where Detroit pulled off the upset 21-20. That was without Travis Kelce. That was without Chris Jones. And it was, in large part thanks to Kadarius Toney, dropping the ball like it's hot. But both teams are a lot different now than they were 2 years later. And Detroit is now the one favorite to win this game. They have a more dynamic offense. They just, I'm trying to remember, who the heck did the Lions play last week? It's been a long, crazy week, so there are definitely a few games that slip my mind. Hold on. Why am I, oh, that's right. They played the Bengals. I'm sorry. I blanked out for a second. They just absolutely crushed the Cincinnati Bengals, which was expected because the Bengals are just absolutely trash without Joe Burrow. Their offense is clicking on those cylinders. The defense, they're 2nd in sacks, and they have really improved since the first week dud against the Green Bay Packers. And they're going to Arrowhead Stadium with a lot of house money. Jared Goff is 2-0 against Patrick Mahomes, so he has that in his favor. But the Chiefs, they need this win badly, or else they're going to be 2-4, and their playoff hopes are going to completely fall off a cliff. Last week, they made it close. They had a lead. The offense made enough plays to, take a late lead with 2 minutes left. But Patrick Mahomes was the one that threw the pick 6 that gave the Jacksonville Jaguars the 7 points they needed to hang on. Their defense completely fell apart on the final drive. You had Chris Jones literally loafing on the go-ahead touchdown drive, which I don't know if it was because he just gave up on the play or if he saw the clock and was like, oh, Patrick Mahomes has 3 timeouts and we still have 30 seconds left. Yeah, we're only going to be down by 3 points. He could just get us in a field goal range and tie the game. I don't know what the logic behind that was, but it's definitely not a good look. The penalties, though, have been absolutely atrocious. They committed 13 of them, and a good chunk of them were on the special teams. Sorry, my voice cracked, but that's just how shocking and that's just how stunning it is to see the Chiefs just go on this slippery slope that they've been on throughout the whole season. The offense is inconsistent, and they lull out with penalties and turnovers. The defense doesn't really look like they're playing together. The special teams is getting in their own way. And now they're going up against the Detroit Lions that is well coached, that has one of the best balanced offenses in football, and a defense that is, starting to find its way with Kelvin Shepherd as the new defensive coordinator. So I think we're going to get another down-to-the-wire showdown. I wouldn't be too surprised if the Chiefs won because they're at home, but it's just the Lions are just a better football team right now, and I think it's going to take a horrifically bad performance from Jared Goff or a supernova performance from Patrick Mahomes for the outcome to reverse. So give me the Lions here, 30-27. All right, now we have two Monday Night Football games. The first one is at 7:15 Eastern between the Buffalo Bills and the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta's coming off a bye. The Bills just lost at home to the New England Patriots thanks to self-inflicted mistakes. I think that this game is going to be won in the trenches. Both defenses are not good at stopping the run, and you've got two of the top 5 running backs in football with Bijan Robinson and James Cook taking center stage. But say that both defenses start to sell out against the run and don't really divert their attention to the pass. Well, in that situation, I like Josh Allen to outplay Michael Penix. And I know that the Falcons defense has been, solid to start the year. They're giving up the fewest passing yards, the fewest total yards in the league. They haven't been too bad in terms of points allowed. But, it just comes down to the quarterbacks in this one. And I think it's going to take near perfection from Penix to beat the Bills on this big of a stage. So I'll say that the Bills hang on at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, 28-16. And now we return to the place where everything fell apart for the Chicago Bears. Northwest Stadium, Landover, Maryland. Monday Night Football at 8:15. The play that sent Chicago's season into a free fall. The Hail Mary that really just broke all that. What's the right way to say it? It was the play where everything just fell off the rails for the Chicago Bears. Now we fast forward to a year later. Jaden Daniels is back. You're not going to have Terry McLaurin. They're coming off a 27-10 victory against the Chargers at the Chargers. The Bears are coming off a bye. Chicago definitely wants this win more than Washington, but the question is, do they have enough? Because Washington's defense did incredible against Justin Herbert. They forced a couple turnovers. They sacked him 4 times. Their offense, the bread and butter has been their running game, and they did a great job of that against a really good Chargers defense with Bill Krosky-Merritt. And even without Jaden Daniels, Deebo Samuel really stepped up and shined at his opportunity, had 96 yards on 8 catches. And, Jaden Daniels, returning from a knee injury, looked like himself again. I mean, there were definitely times where I thought the Chargers were trying to, dare him to win with his arm more than his legs. But the fact that they couldn't stop the run just proved to you that, Washington, they're not going to stray away from their identity. And I don't think that, we should expect anything less against a very angry and a very pissed off Bears defense. So as much as I want to see the Bears get the revenge, they're just not they're not the better football team right now. They have the second worst rush defense in the league. They're not that much better against the pass. They're below average in points allowed. They don't really get to the quarterback. And Washington does all of those things better. I'm not saying they're exponentially better, but, they still rank above them in the stat leaderboards. So with that being said, my final score for the Commanders is going to be, let me see if I remember, 31-17. And with that, the game picks are officially locked in. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for additional content. And I'll see you back with another episode. It's been fun. I love all of you.